everybody, it is me, Pacific. I just got done watching a video called Made, M-A-I-D, in Hong Kong. I thought it was long overdue to do a response to my video, Chinese People Are Rude in Hong Kong. I've gotten a lot of comments supporting my viewpoints. Most of the comments that I received were in favor of everything that I stated. The ones that disagreed with my comments were very rude, very offensive. I want to deal today with a couple of things. I want to deal with the Filipina and the Indonesian domestic helpers in Hong Kong, because I want to say something. Some of you viewers made comments that I had tramp Filipina girlfriends and I was unobjective towards the Chinese. Number one, I did not go out with tramp girls. The Filipinas I met were nice people. I did not get to meet too many Indonesian, but I heard stories from some of them, and I listened to the Filipinas, and I watched with my own eyes what went on while I was in Hong Kong. While I was in Hong Kong, 2011 and part of this year, 2012, Hong Kong passed the right of abode. I think they passed it just before that, allowing Filipinas, if they've been there 7 years, to apply through a process to see if they could qualify for right of abode. For those of you viewers that don't know how Hong Kong works, it works like this. If I as an American get a visa and get to work in Hong Kong and I get successive contracts for 7 years or work and stay there for 7 years, that gives me the right to apply for abode. They pass that, but then the requirements they put on the Filipina are almost unattainable. They have to have a certain amount of money in the bank and stuff like that. As far as I know, to date, as of the publishing of this video, not one Filipina has gotten the right of abode granted to her. The video I watched put out by Dateline is accurate. I was there when this was all being discussed, and a lot of Filipinas applied for the right of abode, and they've all been denied. The Hong Kong government is standing pretty much against it in some ways, and yet they voted it in, or the courts voted it in. They will ask China to back up things if they start letting the Filipinas or Indonesian or any of the domestic helpers have right of abode. And what sickened me, viewers, when I said the Chinese people are rude in Hong Kong, I am dead on. Let me deal with the accusation that I am racist and generalizing. Let me refer all of you to the comments on my site. The majority of the comments coming into me personally in my inbox, and the ones asking for approval to be posted, said everything you said about Hong Kong, Pacific, is true. I love Hong Kong. But the problem with Hong Kong is shiny and showy, but it is shallow and superficial. As I said before, their god is money. I am not racist towards the Chinese. I dated a Chinese woman there. She was not from Hong Kong, though. She was from Guangdong. I have listened to people tell me stories that went to China proper and found that the Chinese women were very friendly and very kind to them. I don't know about the men. Hong Kong Chinese women, on the other hand, were quite stuck-up and conceited as a rule. One of the things that I noticed was a lot of the Chinese treatment of the Filipina and Indonesian domestic helper was appalling, to say the least. The Hong Kong government has ordered a certain wage. I can't remember what it was now, but it comes out to about $400 US a month. Some of the Hong Kong domestic helpers that I know get up at 7 o'clock in the morning. They don't get done till 11 o'clock at night. 6 days a week. The payment that they get is ridiculous, though they would consider it good compared to Philippine pesos. Most of their money is sent back to support their families. And I found a racism to exist. When I had a Filipina on my arm walking through Hong Kong, a lot of Chinese looked down on me just for that. The term that I heard used in Hong Kong over and over was that Filipinas were called the cockroaches of Asia. I watched the video by Dateline saying that the Chinese considered them an eyesore out on their holiday of Sunday in Central and Chater Garden and all around, and they wanted them to be put in an underground parking garage. I have a message for the Hong Kong Chinese. You have no problem using them to do all your dirty work because of your pursuit of the almighty Hong Kong dollar and materialism, but you don't want them to live in your country. How hypocritical can you get? What bothers me is the argument was thrown up to me saying, oh, Pacific, there's so many Filipino domestic helpers that abuse their bosses and steal and do this and that. I know there's bad apples in every bunch, but I know that the bulk of Filipino domestic helpers work their butts off, give their employers 110%, and then when the employer says, well, I'm not going to give you your holiday because I need you for 7 days, and they do this for a month at a time, and they're supposed to give them either day back or give them compensate. A lot of them do not. The Indonesian domestic helpers are more afraid. Many of the Chinese don't even pay them the Hong Kong minimum allowable wage, which is mandatory. They pay them less and withhold their paychecks, and then tell them if you don't do this or this or this, you're not going to get paid. And because of the fear of them losing their contract and being deported, they put up with it. There are Chinese males that when their wives leave, they tell a Filipina, you come here and sleep with me. You complain, you say anything, I'll fire you. Now, let me use a disclaimer. There are some Chinese couples that are very good to their helpers. I have a personal friend. She worked for a Chinese woman who had a son. This Chinese woman is the leader of a prostitution ring in Hong Kong. These were the comments made to me by my friend, who has a daughter in the Philippines, who has a mother. This is a special friend of mine, who is not a whore, and not a jerk, and not a thief, and who is an honest hard worker. She worked for this woman for 2 years and wanted to quit many times, but pushed through. She just just got a new contract with an older Chinese couple that adore her. She has her own room with a toilet in it. They pay her a little more than the Hong Kong allowable wage, and they ask her to sit with them at the table and eat dinner and meals with them. When she told me that, I almost cried, because that is not the norm. I love Hong Kong, but Hong Kong is a hard place. I found a coldness among the Chinese that killed me. I am passionate, energetic, and outgoing. I went over there because I fell in love with a Filipino domestic helper. That relationship did not work out. That was not through fault of my own, and I'm not going to get into that here. In every people, there's a bad apple in every bunch. I didn't know any better. Some people use the term over there calling me some dumb ASS bus driver from the United States, married some dumb Filipina. No, I wasn't a dumb ASS. I followed my heart. I found a level of callousness that exists in Hong Kong, and let's deal with my troll detractors and say, oh, every major city's like that. Yes, I understand that. But Hong Kong has a different kind of thing. You won't get mugged. Okay? If you behave yourself, you can live in China. Nobody punched me. Nobody harmed me. I got pushed and shoved a lot, and I saw rudeness. But I didn't feel that my safety was jeopardized, except with the Hong Kong taxi cab drivers and the Chinese drivers. They were horrible. No questions about it. The way some of these domestic helpers are treated are horrible. Back to my friend who worked for the Chinese prostitution ringleader. This woman did not shave her underarms. This woman would screw her boyfriend outside my friend's bedroom door. She was a domestic helper. She had her own little room. She'd come out, and there they are, doing it on the floor. Her son was so affected. This son was 8 years old. Constantly asked to touch my friend's breasts. Asked her to lift up her shirt. She said, no, that's not appropriate. This little boy, growing up with a Chinese prostitute mother, was already inappropriate and sexualized and sensualized. I asked her, why don't you quit? Because then, Lama, I have to go back to Mindanao. And if I go back to Mindanao, If I get a job, I make little money, and I can't take care of my needs and my daughter and my mother. The Chinese know this, and they know how to muscle their way with these Filipinas. There have been stories of Filipinas being pushed out of the high-rise by their employer to their death. Chinese women accusing when something's missing of their apartment. Where you put the things, you steal them. Only to find that when the Chinese woman looked a little more thoroughly, that the Chinese woman put them in the wrong place. Never came back and said, "I'm sorry, I accused." There are some Filipino domestic helpers that have stolen, that have abused, that have attacked their bosses. Most of the attacks have been provoked by Chinese females who have shoved the domestic helper around, called her bitch, said F-U-C-K-U to her, flipped her off. I knew another woman who went on to go get a job in Macau. She quit her job in tears. She worked for a Chinese woman over there. That woman was harsh with her. Told her, F you, you're a bitch. On and on it went. All for doing her job. She finally quit, went to the agency. The agency tried to find her other work in Hong Kong. And here's the bad news. If you quit and break your contract for legitimate reasons, nobody wants to hire you, especially when you've only been there short term. She went on to Macau and was hired immediately and had a very good, kind boss. I have heard story after story, not one or two or three or four or even 10, but dozens upon dozens of stories of people I knew personally. One of my friends who went on to Montreal, who's a domestic helper over there. She had a husband and wife Chinese couple. As soon as the wife would leave, she called him Mr. Horny. She's in the narrow kitchen. He would come up and bump into her, put his arms around her to help her. She'd say, could you please stop touching me? He'd buy her chocolates. He'd do everything. She finally turned around one day and said, "Sir, if you don't stop being fresh with me, I will report this to your wife." Wife was pregnant, didn't look so good, and my friend, who was quite sexy, but who dressed totally modest and appropriate and made no advances to him, was constantly having to set her boundaries with this Chinese male. I heard more stories that I'm going to put on this video. The women in Hong Kong have every right to apply for a abode, just as much as an expat. To set the financial expectations on those Filipinos is unreasonable. To think that hundreds of thousands are going to flood into the country is unreasonable. Most Filipino I talk to don't want to stay in Hong Kong because of the rude intensity of the Chinese culture. They think, who wants to be in this? I just want to earn enough money and get out. But there were some that did want to stay, so they could start their own business and make more money and have some of the freedoms that they would have in Hong Kong. There was a lot of discrimination and racism, and to watch on Dateline those Chinese people protesting and saying, we don't want them here. You don't hesitate. And the one guy they interviewed that had a domestic helper, Elena or whatever, he's saying, even her, I don't want her to have the right of a boat. Well, let me tell you something, Chinese people. Why don't you do what an American like me does? Get up and clean your own house, put your own laundry in the washing machine, wash your own windows, cook your own food, take care of your own children, and do what many millions of Americans do every day without a domestic helper. I am sick of you guys and your cushy, comfortable financial lifestyle, treating people like slaves, and then thinking you're doing just fine. And then you have the gall to tell them they don't have a right to live in your country. Domestic helpers in Hong Kong are not treated good, by and large. I am tired of the Chinese telling me, well, they should be blessed because we even let them come. Let them come? No, you want them to come and do the work you're unwilling to do because you're busy chasing the almighty dollar. Give me a break. Some of the work that your domestic helpers are doing, they should be paid $1,000 to $2,000 US a month. Hands down. And what bothers me is this is so prevalent that even the Aussies and the other expats pay them low wages as well and make them work 6 days a week, 12 to 15-hour days, and then sometimes take away their 1 day a week off. I saw this in living color with the girl that I pursued over there in Hong Kong. She works from 7 to 11, almost nightly. And these people, money went to their head, prestige of living in Hong Kong went to their head, and these people use these people as slaves. They make noise in their apartment when they have guests over, so the domestic helper can't even get to sleep in her room. It is unbelievable that these people are treated less than human. Let me say it again. I know there's some Chinese and some expats that treat their domestic helpers well and even pay them above and beyond. I'm glad to see that. But this whole right of abode issue is pretty sad. At first I thought they gained something, but the more I looked at the requirements that they still have to pass to be accepted, they're almost insurmountable. It's pretty sad. The expats can come in, and that's why we have a whole bunch of arrogant, egotistical, rude, and chubby Australians living in the middle of Hong Kong that got the right of abode. And I read something about the Australians, and this is to my friend who has been writing me and giving me good articles out of Chinese newspapers and around the globe. The cultural cringe issue is not even something I had heard of. Australians top the list in it. They don't feel comfortable being in another race culture, so they act basically like rednecks and idiots, and because of their insular thinking, they create their own little cloister of people, and they don't assimilate at all. When I lived in Hong Kong, I saw that in the mid-level Soho area. The partying, the beer bottles all over the ground, the loud, obnoxious behavior that Aussies are very well known for, and the idiot, I'm better than you mentality, walking on the Bowen Road and having joggers, Australian 6'4" joggers, ramming into me, knocking me to the ground, Filipinas to the ground, shoving them aside. A lot of the Australian men were bastards. You heard me, Aussies. And they call me a septo because I comment on the behavior I watched with my own eyes. I, as an American, never did a thing to them. I, as an American, never came to Hong Kong acting like I owned the place. I don't. I came respecting the fact that Hong Kong is Hong Kong. I comment on things I see and hear, viewers, and if you don't like it, that's too bad. Saying I generalize? No, I don't generalize. I watch with my eyes, and what I see with my eyes, I report. That's what the news does. Oh yes, in the media in the U.S. sometimes they spin doctor too, and I don't like that. I went over there with the idea that the Chinese were wonderful people, that the women were porcelain dolls and their manners and sweet. I was woken up. Hong Kong is very cosmopolitan, and there is a degree of feminization that has hit the women over there. I wouldn't want to mess with a Chinese woman. I'd beat you in half. The abuse of the domestic helpers is real, and it goes on. And there's no justification for it. And for those of you that want to tell me about your racial comments about the Filipinas, I'm not going to listen to them, and I'm not going to post them. The Filipinas, there are bad apples in that bunch. There's bad apples in every bunch. But it doesn't give the right to a country to exploit them and treat them like slaves, and then turn around and tell them they don't have the same rights that expats have, that if they've been working there for 7 years on contracts, just like white expats or from anywhere in the world. What it boils down to in Hong Kong is if you got money, you're in. If you've got prestige, you're in. And that disgusts me. It is a caste system. It is a form of social racism or class warfare, as well as ethnic racism. The Chinese prostitute ringleader that was my friend's boss would tell my friend, "You are ugly. You are not pretty." Now, I'm here to tell you that most of you viewers, if I were to post a picture of this woman, you would say that she is attractive. She is clean. This one would lay there on the floor, as my friend said, with her unshaven, long underarm hair. She would wash her clothes. She said her clothes smelled so bad it was horrible. This woman and boyfriend would fight and scream in the middle of the night, waking up my friend. I know these stories are true. I got to know this woman. I've known this woman for over a year. I've known her very closely. On her day off, we spent a lot of time together. She's no dummy. She's no dummy at all, and she's very smart. I watched her with the way she dealt with people, so I saw the continuing consistency of this woman to know that she wasn't some thief or manipulator or a jerk. When she came over to my place and fixed me lunch and spent time with me, and I said, "You don't have to fix me anything on your day off. Let me take it." "No, no, no, I want to." She got a new contract with a couple of Chinese people that are very kind to her, and that warms my heart. There are those out there. But Hong Kong in general, they may allow them to come, but they really don't like them. There are some Chinese that do. There are some Chinese males that have ended up marrying their domestic helper. They were single and they fell in love, and I think that is wonderful. But by and large, the culture in Hong Kong is very anti-domestic helper. The Chinese think they're superior to a lot of people, including the domestic helpers. I found that when I talked to Chinese people in restaurants or whatever, and they found out that I was just a simple school bus driver in the U.S., their conversation and their countenance towards me changed immediately. "What? You're an American. You didn't go to university?" "No, sir. I do a job that's needed just like anything else. And guess what? I like it." A lot of Chinese think it's despicable to do those jobs. And yet what I don't understand is you think they'd have compassionate kindness for the people doing the very thing that they consider despicable. The other thing that the Chinese accuse the domestic helpers of is taking away their jobs. There's not one Chinese girl applying for the position of domestic helper anywhere in Hong Kong, as far as I know. And the jobs that the Filipinos would qualify for, even if they became right of abode and were living there, they're not going to be taking any of the higher-end jobs. They're going to be taking stuff that a lot of Chinese don't want to do, like washing dishes, picking up garbage in the streets, being highway workers, whatever. Working in the back of the store, putting stuff away. I find the Chinese argument against domestic helpers completely fallacious. I loved Hong Kong, and I met some good Chinese people that I became friends with, and one that I dated, and I liked them very much. And even they told me, "You know, I like the Filipino. They're pretty, they're nice, they're hardworking." A lot of people get the impression that I'm racist and hateful. If I'm racist, why did I date a Filipino? Why did I date a Chinese? Why have I dated a Korean woman? Why have I dated a Nicaraguan woman and a black woman and women from Chihuahua, Mexico, and people from Europe? I don't think I'm racist. Pacific tries to tell the truth. Pacific makes observations on what he sees. Eyes and ears don't lie. Dateline, and I'm going to put that in my thing, that just confirmed what I saw when I was over there. All those places the domestic helpers are hanging out, I used to walk down there on Sundays and talk with those people. I listened to their stories. And I watched the Chinese walk by and look at them with disgust. They considered them an eyesore because they're all congregated out there. Yet the Chinese have provided no place for them to go on their day off. You go through the IFC mall or any of the malls, there's no benches, there's no seating. They got a couple of coffee tables out on the back on the IFC Mall Plaza between that and Worldwide. You got to be kidding. There's no place for them to go when the weather's adverse, except to go to videoke, and then a lot of them don't want to go because it's an environment of drinking. I went to karaoke to drink, but if you don't buy stuff in karaoke, they don't want you sticking around. Even a lot of the Filipinas that married Hong Kong Chinese and got the ID and then divorced him and started their own business, they don't want people hanging around in there if they're not going to buy stuff. There is no place for the Filipinos to go where it's warm, dry, and safe, where they can truly enjoy. I often joked to my Filipino friends, if I was a multi-billionaire, I'd buy a piece of property in Hong Kong and build something several city blocks long and many stories high, with bunk beds, showers, game rooms, everything. And the only thing they'd have to pay for is any food or services that they bought. Services meaning, haircuts, stuff like that. But to come in the building, sit at the tables, have access to some sort of Wi-Fi system where they could connect just to talk to their family, I would do it. Would I make a profit on it? How could you? But if it just took care of itself for the most part, places for people to sleep and to stay, and yes, have rules so that there's no bad behavior. Hong Kong has provided no place for these ladies to go. I don't know a lot about the Indonesian. Most of them were out in Causeway Bay. But I remember watching the Indonesian Muslim women file into Victoria Park one Sunday. And I watched Australian women, Chinese men. This was a river of humanity going into Victoria Park one Sunday. I am not Muslim. I don't agree with the Muslim faith. But I was moved by the sheer number of women, little, small Muslim women in all their veils and everything, going in there, streaming in, quietly, peacefully, by the thousands. There's a running track around there. The Chinese and the Aussies couldn't be polite and let a group of them get out of the way. I watched the Chinese man shove and push, and I yelled, "Hey, stop it!" The Chinese man stopped in his running and glared at me and says, "Who are you?" And I said, "No, who are you? You don't have the right to shove people around." I said, "You're a jerk." He stared me down, turned around, and continued running. A white woman came by and shoved one out of the way. I'm not going to repeat what I said, because it's profanity, and I said, "You are horrible." She stopped. She goes, "Excuse me?" I said, "You are horrible. Do you think you're better than these people and you shove them out of the way? You can't stop and wait for a break in traffic? Your running is so important you shove these people out of the way like chattel?" She actually put her head down and said, "I'm sorry." I said, "You know what? I am sick of the way you guys treat these people. It is unacceptable." Hong Kong doesn't like it when I speak out against their garbage. But I'm sick of the white people that move over and get right of a boat and start walking around like they own the place. The thing that makes Hong Kong great, Hong Kongers, is its diversity, including the so-called cockroaches of Asia. I dated a lot of those Filipina, and they were beautiful ladies, hardworking people with hopes, dreams, and heartaches just like you guys. It seems that a lot of the Chinese people have lost their soul, and they become cold, dark stones just after money, climbing on whatever is in their way, just for success, for their own self-preservation. I don't call that greatness. The world system we live in extols the financially and educationally secure, and they're taught to look down on those that do the menial jobs. And yet the hypocrisy of Chinese society in Hong Kong is that those people that are doing those menial jobs that are looked down on because they don't have an education, if you take and educate every person to do the high-paying jobs that you have no bus drivers, no taxi drivers, no ferry operators, no food service people, no furniture makers, no truck drivers, nothing. How stupid is that? It takes all people to make things work. The people that come in and fix your lights, clean your toilets, install your furnishings, and install your carpet may not have a college degree, Chinese people, but they're human beings trying to make a living too. I care for the Filipino domestic helpers. I've had my share of problems with some of the ladies and seen some of the crap that they've done, but I know this. I know a lot that are good people. And I know that Hong Kong needs to straighten up its attitude towards domestic helpers. If you don't want them to have right of abode, then don't even hire them to do your dirty work. I suggest all you rich brats learn how to do something that the rest of us in America have been doing for a long time. Pull up your own pants and cowboy up. Pacific washes his own truck, washes his own windows, cleans his own toilet, makes his own dinner, and I wash my own clothes. And on top of that, I go to work and still maintain a social life. I don't go 12, 15-hour days, 6 days a week for the almighty dollar. It is futile. I have my needs met, and that's important. This is all Pacific has to say about it. Thanks for watching. And for those of you that want to leave nasty, hateful comments, you will not be published. They have to meet my approval, so don't leave them. Bye-bye.